and he's starting at Rutgers. And I've known you for what, 4 or 5 years at this point?
I think 4.
4 years, yeah. Mason joined me at the Rutgers Writers Conference. I think you sat in on a couple Inside the Writers House sessions. I'm looking forward to having you as a student.
Oh yeah, I feel like I already have been, honestly. All right, thank you all for being here. I heard about we had to write a thing about cryptids, I thought, okay, I heard something scary, but I want to take it from an interesting perspective, and so this is what I wrote. Do I exist? Really, think about it. Do I exist? Some would say I don't, that I'm a myth. They'd say I was conjured up by smarmy older siblings, by campers over a dying light in the deep of night, or by town crazy on the corner of Main Street. To them, I am no more real than a fairy tale. But there are others who do believe I exist. They believe that I breathe, and that I eat, and that I sleep, and that if they just look hard enough, they might be able to see me with their own 2 eyes. To them, I am as real as everything they've never seen. One thing separates these 2 camps: proof. Oh sure, there's proof floating around. Grainy photos and videos shakier than earthquake dashcam footage. What I'm talking about is real proof. Indisputable proof. Proof so tangible, so visceral in its reality, that even the most skeptical would falter. Real proof. That was the mission. And the daring adventurer? Laura. If she could only obtain that proof, they would all believe her that I exist. Her parents would stop condemning her for her late night window checks and furious doodles that took up her homework. Her classmates would look at her like a hero, and she and her friends would gain town-wide acclaim. No, if she got real proof, it would be groundbreaking. Just think about it. It would be everywhere. Her face would dominate the news cycle. Scientists would arrive in big white lab coats to analyze her findings. The president would fly down onto her backyard in a big helicopter. He'd walk across the yard, he'd take off his sunglasses and say, "Laura, you did it. I believe you. It exists." But that was all later. First, she needed to get that real proof. The day of the mission was like many other important days. Summer, cloudless, heat simmering on asphalt, only the occasional merciful breeze rustling the treetops. It was a canvas of a day, untapped, undiscovered. Laura ventured out of her house with friends while the sun was still high, clad in t-shirts and a mandatory lather of sunscreen. They struck out into the unknown. One of Laura's friends brandished a large curved stick, another a sizable Nerf gun. Defense if they needed it. But Laura was the crux of the mission, wielding a small pink camera, something given to her in the cold of last Christmas. Now that little machine would change history, and Laura grasped it with such importance. The crew made their way to the woods on the outskirts of town, a trailhead straddling a park. That was where they said I lived, where I prowled, and maybe even where I hunted. The small trail weaved through the underbrush, the adventurers cutting through it, keeping tight formation. Shadows danced along the forest floor. Sticks snapped. Leaves rustled. Somewhere nearby, a stream whispered. The further they got from the trailhead, the more unkempt the path became, the forest closing in around them. As the sun slowly descended from the sky, the shadows became longer, more jagged. Familiarity faded. Thrill bled to fear. What was that? One of the adventurers called out in distress. This wasn't a good idea. But the defensive stick was held high. The Nerf gun traced the underbrush. But Laura was unperturbed. Now they were closer than ever to finding me. Uncertain, danger lurking in every snapped twig, they pushed forward. Finally, the adventurers made it to a clearing, more safe and open than the trail. Laura gave them a short pep talk. I was close. She could feel it. If they backed down now, they might lose that real proof forever. Didn't they want to change the world? Suddenly, a bush rustled violently. A large branch crackled. Eyes flashed outward and scanned the shadowy undergrowth. There's something there. An adventurer yelped, pointed into the dark green abyss. A shriek, a Nerf bullet firing. I was there, they shouted. I was there. There was a mad dash, panic filling the cooling air as they pivoted and scampered down the trail. But Laura didn't see it, and more importantly, she didn't capture it. But Laura, as her fellow adventurers abandoned her, she stood firm. She lifted the camera and scanned the area. Where was I? Where was I? Where was I? And then Laura smiled, and her camera clicked. Then she bounded after them, a grin splashed across her face. Of course, the picture wasn't all that Laura would have hoped. It was grainy. The woods were too dark, but after poring over it in the now safe adventurers could agree that maybe that shadow was my leg, maybe my head, or maybe my tail. Still, it did nothing to inspire her parents to believe her, and she returned to school with little fanfare. No scientists arrived with lab coats, no helicopters descended from the sky. So I'll ask you again, do I exist? Maybe they're right. Maybe I am only a myth, imagination conjured into wondrous reality. But you want to know what I believe? I believe that in that moment, in the shadowy woods, on that summer day, Laura saw me. Thank you.
All right. Woo!